So can you hear me okay? Audio is good? All right. I really have no idea what the problem is there. This happens every time at a certain point. And unfortunately, there's a possibility that will happen again. So we'll see. So Mamoon is saying, how many hours a day should we practice? Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on how much time you have available. I can only tell you how much time a day I work in Maya, and the days that I'm starting at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I'll end at 11 o'clock in the evening. But in general, I would say I'm in Maya at very minimal. I would say about somewhere between 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So hopefully that doesn't freak you out, but it's not that I have to, it's that I want to. And if you want to make a living doing this, then you have to be really, really nuts about it. Because if you feel that this is working, then you need to do something else. So let's see, is it hard to correct errors when importing into Unity? Well, I personally don't work in Unity, but I assume if there are import issues in Unity that they are because of a corrupted mesh in Maya to begin with. So I would look at fixing that problem in Maya and not in Unity. Do I have plans on doing tutorials in, for example, Blender or 3ds Max? Probably not, for the simple reason that I get a lot of feedback from people that work in 3ds Max and in Blender, and they follow my tutorials regardless because the principles are the same. And if you can do one, you can do the other. So how much to charge for a freelance 3D model? What are things to consider while charging for it? Well, again, good question. First of all, it depends on where that question is coming from, and it depends on how strict that is. I'll give you an example. Let's say you get a question from a large game studio, and they want you to create a model for their next game, and they got 500 pages of text explaining what they want, right? Then you will have to go through all that. You will have to read it. You will have to check with them and do a prototype and have it checked again and sign off and so forth. So you're spending a lot of time on that, right? Now, the other alternative is your next door neighbor needs a model for a render on his website, and he has a budget of $50, right? So there's a huge range between the two. Normally, it's related to how much time you're investing. And you should ask the customer what their budget is and, what they're expecting. Okay, so retopology. What is retopology? Well, the best way to describe this is whenever you have a model that is textured and that you, for example, want to use, let's say in a game, then your line flow has to be clean and it has to be, from a poly count point of view, fairly low. Now, the thing is, if you have a model that has, let's say, 4 million polygons, it's never going to work in a game, ever. So what you need to do is you basically need to rebuild that high poly model using far less polygons. So you're going to take, I like to explain it like this. You're going to take a statue, let's say a character, and you're going to take those bathroom tiles, which are basically just faces, and you're going to start to cover that high poly model with tiles, okay? And that way, once you're done, your 7 million polygon high mesh is turned into a 10,000 poly count low mesh. I mean, that sounds a bit weird, but hopefully you know what I mean, okay? So again, a good question. What should we learn after having a good command in modeling? Now, why is that a good question? Because a lot of people, they learn everything there's to know in Maya. They know every button, they know every hotkey, every shortcut, every whatever. And then they are wondering why they're not being hired as a 3D artist. Well, a 3D artist is not about understanding Maya. A 3D artist is about helping the customer tell their story. So that's my point. What is important is storytelling. So learn about, how stories are built with a start, a midsection, and a finish. How human emotion is important in animation. How human movement is important. How you, as a 3D artist, can contribute to storytelling, basically. Do I teach in lighting and rendering? Yes, I do. Okay, so how to fix when mesh goes completely green? Well, when a mesh goes green, that means that the link between the model and the texture is lost. So if you, for example, have an external 2D file of, let's say, wood, and this texture is applied on a Maya model, and then on your desktop you delete that file, then your model will turn green because it's looking for that file and you can't find it anymore. So it's either gone or moved or the link is broken. So you will have to reapply that. Okay, so Ashish Hembrom is saying, I work in my laptop and sometimes my head aches and my eyes hurt while working too long. Okay, well, first of all, that happens to all of us. It's kind of an occupational hazard. I know many people that have neck problems, elbow problems, wrist problems. They got repetitive stress injury, even to the extent where they cannot work for many months. So it is extremely important to make sure you got good gear, or at least a screen that is in the proper height, so you don't get that problem, and that you take a break frequently. You don't have to take a lunch break of an hour every 3 hours, but just make sure that every hour or so you take a 5-minute break. So what is the best way to learn Maya? Watch my videos. Just kidding. Watch my videos. I mainly work in Maya. I did about 900 videos so far. And if you want to learn Maya and not spend 1 penny, then watch my videos. Is it okay to sell 3D models or cars without asking the permission of the manufacturer? Technically, you're not allowed. But again, technically. The thing is, Ford Motor Company is not going to pursue you because you sold a model of a Ford. It's a different thing when you are selling models online and you are making $500,000 a year selling 10,000 models of Ford vehicles. Then you're probably going to get noticed and they're going to have an issue with that. Okay, so making videos of Maya basics, and it's everyone's request. Well, I made basic Maya videos and I posted them as such, and they're called Maya Basics. Okay, so let's see. I like watching tutorials like how to model a high poly robot and render it photorealistically. Can you make a tutorial? Well, I kind of addressed that because when you do stuff like that, you are talking about tutorials that will take many, many, many hours. And my goal is not to show you that I can model something. My goal is to teach you guys techniques so you can model something. Okay. Okay, so Red Hood is saying, I'm building a PC. I want to know what parts will actually affect my render time the most. Well, it's always a combination, but for now, most software packages rely heavily on the processor or CPU when it comes to rendering. But that trend is that it's moving more and more towards video card or graphic cards rendering. So I would say when you're building a system, at the very, very least, it has to be an Intel i7 CPU with the highest core count you can afford. when working in Maya, a minimum of 16 gigabyte RAM, and this is low. It's probably better to have 32 or 64, and then the best video card you can get. Now, from a media standpoint, if you have a solid state drive, I would use that for my media. So for my files that I'm using, my project files, because that will increase load time a lot. So let's see, All-Time Creator Studio. After watching your videos, probably how long it will take to become a professional like you. Well, I don't know what a professional like me means, but if you're talking about how long does it take for you to be able to make money as a 3D artist, I don't know if that's the question, because I've spent 30 plus years on this, and you know, I don't think that's what you want to do. But that said, it kind of depends on how fast you learn. Learning Maya from a technical standpoint, so what are all the buttons and what do they do and how does that work? In the theory of 3D modeling, I would say you can have a very good comprehension of all of that in 6 months, okay? And then within a year, you should be able to model almost anything. But keep in mind, the difference between modeling everything and modeling everything properly is a difference between 1 year experience and 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years experience. So let's see, Jennifer, can you do a tutorial on modeling basics, and when can you use different techniques in Maya? Well, Jennifer, I did a lot of videos on modeling basics, dozens and dozens, and I try to always incorporate as many different techniques as possible, okay? So Hidden Fireworks is saying best software for hair and fur. I use, you know, XGen for that. Let's see, Ninja VS. I'm an older web designer trying to transition into 3D modeling, animation, and motion graphics. My skills are currently intermediate. How realistic are my prospects of finding skill building work? Well, you know, you're saying you're an older web designer. I don't know what you mean by older, but if you're an old fart like me, then you still have a chance to make it, because it's, for the most part, it's about your work. So if your work's good, you should be okay. Ahmed Reda, thank you very much. Okay, now this is a nice question. I want to model a shoe. What should be my workflow? A football shoe, to be precise. Well, first question is it for a game situation or is it for a movie/animation situation? All-Time Creator Studio, is modeling my profession? Yes, it's my profession. Okay, so model without reference, does that apply to character modeling like cartoons? Well, that kind of depends. I mean, if you are working based off of concept art, I mean, I would typically not recommend to model without a reference. Only do that if you want to challenge yourself and build your skills as far as, you know, visualization and so forth. But normally you should definitely use that, okay? Now, to get back to the question of the football shoe, you know, if it's animation related, then what you need to do is get reference material, of course. So top view, side view, front view. You need to know what kind of colors you want to use. You need to know whether you're going to do stitching or not, and so forth. Then what I would do is I would block out the low poly model in Maya, so a very low poly rough model. Then I would bring it into ZBrush or ZBrush, whatever you want to call that. I would then remesh it, so I got a nice even edge flow. Then I would UV it in ZBrush, and then I would copy that low poly UV'd model. I would save that as a high poly duplicate, and then I would start to increase subdivision level on that to, I would say, about 6 or 7 million poly count. Then I would take that model and add detail, sculpting, moving, modifying, and so forth. Then I would export the low poly model back into Maya. I would create a color ID mask on that low poly model so I can have identifiers when I texture in Substance Painter. Then I would import the low poly model into Substance Painter. I would import the high poly model into Substance Painter. I would bake all my maps. I would apply all the textures to the shoe, and then I would export all the textures, import them into Marmoset Toolbag or, for example, Keyshot, and then I would do my final render. Does that answer the question? So AdventureCraft 360 is saying, I want to donate. Well, that's cool. If you want to do that, I got a PayPal account, which is called hermesmike@hotmail.com, or I have a Patreon page. And if you hang on one sec. There it is. Now, keep in mind, guys, that I don't do these videos to get money off of you guys. I mean, that's not why I do this. I do this because I want to give back to the community. But keep in mind that that doesn't mean that I do not appreciate your support. I mean, as far as YouTube paying the bills, that's, of course, completely not good. But that said, it's really fulfilling for me to talk to you guys and, you know, help you guys where I can. And you guys help me too. So that's kind of cool. Just reading a couple of comments here, guys. Well, thank you, Shiva. So I'm still wondering, guys, where are you guys from? Because you got all these cool names, and I have no idea where you're from. And I kind of want to get a sense of, you know, how big this community is. So if you would want to let me know, that'd be cool. Toronto, Ontario. I was there a couple of weeks ago. Dallas, been there. Mauritania, wow. Ireland, oh, love Ireland. Just for the people from Ireland here, I'm a certified fly fish instructor. That's why I love Ireland. So let's see, Germany, yeah, been there many, many times, of course. India, didn't have the pleasure just yet. Norway, because of my fly fishing, again, been there many, many times. Egypt, been there. Let's see, what else? Huh, 4 times Germany now. Let's see, do I have an online portfolio? Well, to be honest, I don't really. I post stuff on ArtStation on occasion. But the reason why I don't really do that is when I work for clients, they're usually so specific that I work together with clients on developing whatever they need. And for some reason, maybe because of my tutorials, I don't know, they actually never ask for a tutorial or for a portfolio. So I, for example, work with universities to create medical simulations or scientific simulations on nanotechnology, that kind of stuff. And they basically just explain to me, you know, what they want, and I'll create it. Okay. So AdventureCraft 360 is saying, what was my job in a corporate office? I was responsible for operations on an EMEA level, meaning that I worked for a very large company, 150,000 employees. And I was responsible for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Had a team of about 400 people and a spend of about $12 billion. So, yeah, that's what I did. And to be honest, I don't miss it at all. And I like this a lot more. So how much can you earn after learning this? Well, I don't want to burst your bubble here, but if you are into the 3D business to make money, then don't. It doesn't mean that you can't make money in this industry. You can. I mean, you can make enough money to have a nice living, but if you want to, make big bucks and drive fancy cars and whatever, in my experience, this job is much more about the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to work with interesting people. But I went from a tailored Italian $2,000 suits to basically black t-shirts and jeans, right? And I'm totally happy with that. So it's all on, it all depends on what you want. Okay, so two questions that I want to combine here. I got a question about whether I ever had unhappy clients. Of course, I did. And usually customers are unhappy because you as a 3D animator or a modeler, I think, need to manage expectations. So customers sometimes don't really know exactly what they want, and you need to help clarify that for them and for you as well. And if they get a sense that you're going to be able to do something in a day and it's going to take you a month, they're not going to be satisfied. If they think it's going to cost them $10 and you're going to ask $10,000, they're not going to be satisfied. So in my scenario, what I had experience with is that, this was actually for a very, very, very large client, and they manufacture mobile phones, and they're number 2 next to Apple. So you know who I'm talking about, right? And they had a project, and I had to drop everything on a Sunday and drive to Amsterdam and talk about it and work on it and all that. And then they said, we got a deadline of 1 week. We need everything done by next Sunday. So 1 week. I said, well, that's not okay. But, if that's the case, it's the case. So what you need to do is give me all the details as soon as possible. And what happened is, on Monday, no details. On Tuesday, no details. On Wednesday, no details. And I said, well, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's taking too long. And then I said, at some point, either move the deadline or I'm out. And they didn't want to do that. And they were very unsatisfied. And I basically bailed on the project. So not really a lot you can do there, but it happens. Is it okay to use rejected work from client for my own use? Well, that depends. If you have signed a non-disclosure agreement and you agreed in that agreement that everything they provide you is protected, then you cannot. If this is work that you have come up with and it's your concept art and you created everything and they didn't accept it and it's not part of the deal, then you can. So Mufazal Hussain is saying, I have a question. Okay, what's the question? Let's see. Hey. So Jennifer is saying, how do I price myself? Well, I talked a little bit about that earlier. And well, it kind of depends on whether it's a long project or not. If you're selling commodities, if you want to call it that, let's say somebody says, I want a 3D model of a table, and you provide that table. You can price the table, okay? But other than that, people are typically paying for your time. So if I want you to model a table for me, and it's going to be very specific and very detailed, and I want to have 25 meetings about it, it's going to cost much more, of course. But normally I anticipate based on an initial meeting that is usually free. I will anticipate how much time I need, and I will tell the customer, okay, this is the time I need. This is my hourly rate. This is what you're going to pay. right? And then if you take longer, it's going to cost you more. So let's see. Shivi is saying, I'm in an art school and I'm learning VFX. I want to know what software I need to learn apart from the course and syllabus. I want to get into the VFX industry. Okay. Well, when it comes to the VFX industry, things are changing fast for the simple reason that in the past, what you would be doing is you would be creating explosions and smoke and fire and whatnot. But what happens more and more is that, you know, practical things are required from VFX artists because they want to do VFX because the real scene isn't available, or the real actor isn't available, or the real prop isn't available. Also, for continuity, let's say you got a shot in a regular movie, so not animated movie, a regular movie. The main character does a shot on Monday and Tuesday, but on Tuesday they forget to wear their belt or whatever, and they find out after it's done. You will have to go in and add the belt and add it to the scene. So as far as answering what software you should be able to know, I would say at the very least Houdini and Nuke, but make sure you have a good understanding of all the elements of VFX, regardless of software. That would be my my answer on that one. So PRKR is leaving. Thank you. And let's see, guys. We're I think I'm pushing well over an hour here, so I want to go for, let's say, another 5 minutes or so, and then it's 3 o'clock my time locally, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. So any questions? Let's see. Are 3D artists great right now? Is it in demand? Well, Carlos, 3D artists have never been in such demand as they are right now. The business is booming. And I'll give you a very simple explanation. If you go to IKEA, and I assume you know what that is, the big store, you know, the blue store with the yellow letters on it, and you open up a catalog and you got 500 kitchens in there, a red one and a blue one and a green one and whatever. Back in the day, they would have to send a team of people out to build that kitchen, right? Now, instead, they can have a 3D animator model it. So which is cheaper? So all the companies now are moving towards 3D simulation, 3D training, virtual reality, augmented reality. So the game industry is like a $1 billion industry. So it's booming. What do I do to stay focused when I'm staring at a computer screen all day? Well, first of all, I take, I would say, a break every hour or so. And what I tend to do is if I need to work on a project, I tend to break it down into elements that are all related to the project, but are very different in activity. For example, if I need to create a 3D model, part of it is a mood board, part of it is a storyboard, part of it is concept work, part of it is the character. So what I will do is, let's say I don't feel like sitting behind my computer today, I'll take my photo camera, go outdoors and take reference photos, right? So that way I'm not sitting, you know, behind my computer all day. Then if I don't want to sit behind the computer, I can do sketches instead, right? And just, you know, take a piece of paper, sit outside and sketch on it. So what you need to do is really plan your activities and mix them up in a way that it stays interesting. Okay. So I got one question for you guys before I wrap this up. Let's see. What keeps me motivated in the 3D work that I do? Well, the fact that I love it. So a final question for you guys is this, and it's not really related, but I want to get this out there to as much people as possible. If you know my videos, you probably know that I have a sponsor on my YouTube channel. Okay. Now that contract is ending July 1st, and I'm talking to companies to see if I can find a new sponsor that will help me to continue with my videos. Now that's in a couple of weeks. I haven't nailed it down just yet. So if you guys work for companies, have a company or whatever, and you want to get your company in front of 500,000 people a month, basically let me know through email, because I need to make that happen. Otherwise, you know, my videos are going to be in trouble. All right. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching and for chatting with me today. If you got any questions, let me know. I'll just write down my email address here if you ever want to ask me something directly. And that said, you guys are all awesome. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time. Bye.